Jack, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm really excited for us to have this month's conversation.
Morné, the last time that we were here having these conversations, it seemed like we were going to go on all the way through the weekend. I promise we'll go shorter this time.
We'll do our best. I think last time we had to kind of cut it at about an hour and 10 because people wanted to go watch the Masters, if I recall. But today I've selected slightly less content, but these are big, juicy topics and ones that seem to repeat again and again with CEOs. So today we're only going to cover 2 questions. One's going to be themed around this whole process of when you're growing a sales team and you're an owner, manager, CEO. What happens when you are the de facto sales manager and now you need to hire somebody to do that? And there's all kinds of dynamics around that. And then the second one is one that seems to come up a lot with sales leaders and CEOs. And that is, what is the right compensation? How do we structure compensation for salespeople? What if they're a hunter? What if they're an account manager? What if they're a farmer? How motivating or demotivating is this compensation actually? So there's a bit of a theme around that. So as per our last session, I'm going to read out 2 questions, and then you and I are just going to have some fun, as we always do, and really give some value back to all of the listeners about what can you do about these 2 important themes. So you up for it?
Good. Let's go.
I love it. Right. So the first question is from Peter, and Peter is in Arkansas. And Peter appears to be an owner, manager, entrepreneur of a business of some description. And he says, I'm managing a small team of salespeople, but my availability is limited due to other responsibilities as a business owner. What advice do you have around promoting one of my salespeople to sales manager? We would expect him to keep selling. So what systems and processes can we put in place to support him in managing the team? Peter, I'm so glad that you're not on this call because I sort of know what Jack's going to say. And I think there's going to be part of it that you're not going to like, but I implore you to take the medicine. It's going to be good for you, I promise.
I'm going to try to be well behaved, actually, Morné.
Okay, good. Right? Let's see.
So we really need to unpack this one before we even weigh in. It's difficult for me to opine at this stage because I don't know what the vision is of the company, what Peter has in mind with regard to the company.
Sure.
Let me give a setting to that. Let's just assume, because he says he's got a relatively small sales team. Let's just assume that he has 3 salespeople in his company, and let's say that they're doing a collective $5 million a year in revenue. What's the vision? What is Peter's vision for the company? What's the company going to look like 5 years from now? If he tells me that 5 years from now, he would like his $5 million company to be $20 million, and he sees a sales team of 15 to 20 salespeople being on board, as opposed to the 3 that he has today, well, the answer and the prescription that I'm going to deal at is going to be very, very different than if he's comfortable with his $5 million a year company and over the next 5 years wants to take it to $7 million, and he sees 5 salespeople in his future as opposed to 20 type of thing. So if it's the larger vision, then what he's doing, wearing multiple hats, it falls into one of the sins that I call of sales management, because every moment that he's wearing the multiple hats, one of the ones that he's not wearing is leading the sales team. Right. And if you want to grow your sales, you grow your sales force in quantity and quality. And so if he's wearing an operations hat, he's wearing a sales manager's hat, he's wearing the CEO hat, and I don't know what other hats that Peter's wearing, but what he's doing is that strategy is called growing the company part-time. Now, when you started the company, Peter, I don't think that you said, I'm excited about this business and I'm going to grow it part-time. But de facto, that's what you're doing. So if your vision is to go bigger, then I would tell you, step up to the plate and hire yourself a full-time sales manager. And that person will pay for themselves in likely less than a year with the increased business that that person and their team drives into the house. Okay. My second point here is that that if we look to have that person producing themselves, or if you were to take the strategy that he alluded to, taking a salesperson on the team and giving them a sales manager role, plus having their own book of business, well, how are you going to pay that individual? Because likely they're going to make more producing sales. And if they're producing sales and making more money doing that, then the stuff that they're going to be doing sales management is like a distraction, and it will get ill-served. It will not be well attended to. And so I'm not a fan of that either. And so, you know, an awful lot of minds are built into the question that points to less success. And it just sounds very tentative in terms of the approach to growing the company. So that's my take. What's yours? What do you got?
That's a very well-behaved answer, Jack. Look, you've touched on a lot of the things that I would typically tell clients when they come to me with this. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of color commentary. So Peter, from my perspective, in my experience, and Jack sort of alluded to this, when you're promoting what I'm assuming is a good or your best salesperson to sales manager, that very rarely works. The reason it very rarely works is because a good or a great salesperson, by definition, almost disqualifies themselves from being a good manager. Why? Because the high payoff activity for a good salesperson is to grow sales, grow the accounts you've got, find new customers, right? That's what they're there for. So great salespeople are appropriately selfish. They've got blinkers on, and they don't get distracted from how to win that deal. And you sort of need them to have that slight narcissism in order for them to be persistent and dogmatic and win that business. The high payoff activity for a sales manager is to grow people. Jack said it, grow people in quantity and quality. So somebody who is appropriately selfish to win deals very rarely has the people skills to then manage a team. So what we find is that good salespeople that get promoted, their approach to sales management is, hey, there's the gold, pick it up, dummy, versus coaching people on how to mine for gold. They sort of have that opinion that, well, why don't you just do what I do? I was the best salesperson in the team, just follow my lead. That's not a sales manager. That's a team leader. That's an on-field captain. And there could be value in having that. But if you want a sales manager, and this comes back to Jack's point about what's the vision for the company. If the vision for the company is to grow it, and it sounds to me like you're growing, otherwise the pressure on your time would not be so much of an issue. If you're trying to grow this company 2x, 3x, 5x, whatever it might be, then you need a sales manager who's going to grow the team in quality and quantity. Now, I appreciate that often when we make that transition, there can often be a limiting belief is I can't afford a sales manager who doesn't themselves sell. And I think, like Jack says, that is a false economy. A sales manager that was hired correctly, is the right kind of person, a great coach, will pay for themselves in the first year and then some. How you compensate them, as Jack said, that's super important. But there's another element of that we don't think about. This idea of affordability, what a lot of business owners don't think about is if you're pulling $250,000, $300,000 out of your business a year or more, you're paying yourself on average about $150 to $250 an hour. That's what it breaks down to. And you're not thinking about the opportunity cost of your time if you're doing the things that that sales manager is going to take over. The coaching that you should be doing, the training, the onboarding, the joint field sales calls, the role practice. You're not thinking about the time that it takes to recruit that team, to do performance management, et cetera, et cetera. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of your time spending on sales management, and that's at the expense of you not running your business, of all the other departments that are not getting your attention.
Hey, Morné, and you know what? I'm loving the fact that you're tying in the affordability question, because it's sort of inferred in the way Peter teed up the question.
Correct.
He wouldn't be suggesting the approach that he was if he felt flush with cash. And I know we're leaking into a bit of the next topic here,
Sure.
but it's embedded in this. And you know, the more from a compensation standpoint, and you know, I can't help but get into that. But before the next topic in question, but the more that we can tie compensation of salespeople and sales managers to the revenues being generated, the profits that are going into the company, such that they in effect pay for themselves. And so instead of looking at it as an expense burden, we approach the sales organization as an investment vehicle, and we're extracting our return on investment. And so there is a mindset, and we've talked about this mindset on previous questions, but there's a mindset, particularly in the environment out there today, where it's like it's difficult to find people, and they're demanding more in salary and so forth and so on. I am not looking at ways to skinny down what I pay salespeople. I love to pay salespeople a lot of money, as long as it's tied in with revenue and profits being generated, right? So, you know, I've had salespeople, as the owner of my own companies, I've had salespeople that have made significantly more than me on an annual basis, but they earned it because of all of the money they brought into my company, on the top line and the bottom line. So affordability is easier when you link it there, as opposed to I think the way it was, you know, articulated, market-driven compensation and that type of thing. So give some real thought to how you're compensating your salespeople and your prospective sales manager.
For sure. And I think that actually bridges us very nicely into the second question, Jack, which was from Louisa here in Florida. And she said, we've structured what we believe is a good compensation structure for our salespeople. It's made up of a market-driven base salary, plus commission and bonuses for on-target performance. The challenge is that none of the salespeople are hitting the target revenue consistently, so they're not really benefiting from the commissions that are in place. How would you change the compensation model to make it more motivating? What are your thoughts on that?
So there is some key terminology in the question of Louisa's that is a disaster from my perspective.
Okay.
And that is on target performance. That particular approach to sales compensation, I am not only am I not a fan of, it is a disaster.
Wow.
Over the years, whether we like it or not, as business owners, we have eroded the trust of many salespeople. And where we erode the trust is that when we as salespeople start to do well, we feel like the company comes back and says, we're going to adjust the compensation system. And it always feels like, gosh, we're hitting our numbers and we're doing well and I'm making good money. And all of a sudden we got a change in the comp plan and it's harder for me to make what I was making before. And that's where the trust goes away. Well, let's go back to on-target performance. The salespeople are not making their commissions because the commissions don't ignite until we hit target. Well, who's making up the target? The management or ownership. Louisa makes the target. The target isn't achievable, or it's such a stretch that the commissions or the opportunity to make bonuses is not real. And so once again, I don't trust this. True commissions are directly tied to real dollars being produced on the revenue side of the house. Sales, commission rate, my income as a salesperson. Now, I will, you know this well. My nirvana on compensating salespeople is 100% commission only. And then I don't have to worry about any of the money coming out of my pocket because it's directly tied to revenue and profitability, and that's what that's what I'm about, right? And to the degree that my salespeople make a lot of money, well, there's no problem there because we already built it into the equation on the revenue and the profit formula. And so the more they make, the more the company makes, which is enriching me as the owner. So I would move away from tying any bonuses or commissions to targets and make that real numbers. You generate these dollars and you get this type of commission rate. And if you want to look at a commission plan that has step-ups, that you get to certain levels and the commission rate gets even higher, and then we've got versions where when you hit the higher level, maybe you even go back and pay the other one retroactively for the differential, which really sends a real signal for a bonus there. Because, wow, I was paid 3% commission on the first 2 million, and all of a sudden I go through the 2 million and I get to the 5% commission, but we do it retro on the first 3 million. There's a giant bonus. Now, if I'm at 4.5 million, and I know at 5 I get to go after and get a big bonus based on what I've already done, I'm charged up now. Right,
it was like an accelerator on early commission, is what it is.
Yeah, right. But again, where Luis is at right now in that target, gosh, so often what we find is the salespeople, whether they're expressing it to you or not, behind the curtain, they're saying the targets are just not achievable.
I love that. That's a great way of looking at it. And what I'll add to that, Louisa, is from my perspective, when I read your question, 3 things came to mind. Number one, which is what Jack is talking about now, is do you actually, in fact, have the right compensation structure? You mentioned in your question, we believe we have a good compensation structure. What does good actually look like, and how do we know? If, in fact, we've interpreted your question correctly, and you're saying that they can only make commission if they're hitting certain on-target numbers, and that's why they're not benefiting, then I would agree with Jack. Salespeople are simple creatures, and instant gratification is going to drive motivation more than anything. So what we're saying, to be clear, is compensate them from $1. If you need to, have what we call a graduated commission structure, so where you have 1% on the first 100,000, 2% on the next, whatever it might be. So it graduates the better they do, but give them instant gratification from $1. If a salesperson sells this pen, then that's a $2 pen and I get 10 cents. Great, let's go. That's going to drive immediate gratification, instant gratification, and probably will get you better traction to start with.
Hey, Morné, let me just stop you right there for just a moment because I don't want to lose this. That immediate gratification point is so important. I'm going to set something up that the listener will go, well, this Jack is just not playing in the real world. But if it was easy to do, I would love to pay my salespeople every day their commissions earned. Wow. Every day. Now there are companies that they don't pay their salespeople commissions for 15 to 30 days after the month in which they produce because their accounting systems aren't capable of doing this. Well, my suggestion is, well, fix the damn accounting system. And, I was an accountant. I was a trained accountant, worked at Arthur Andersen and all of that. So I understand what the heavy lifting that needs to do there. But can you imagine every day at the end of the day into your bank account automatically went your commissions? I mean, and I look at it and go, wow, tomorrow I'm going to go knock the ball out of the park. So that immediate gratification you're bringing up is huge.
I love, well, that's elevated thinking, right? That's 10x thinking. That's not what most people, in fact, it's worse than that. I'm sure you've had this experience. I had this experience recently with a team of salespeople we were coaching for a client. And I said to one of the salespeople, where are you against your target? And what does that mean for you in terms of commission this quarter? No word of a lie. This was the answer. I'll have to check with my sales manager. And I said, I don't understand. He goes, I'm not sure where I am against my quota this quarter. And we get told at the end of the quarter how much commission we've earned. My jaw hit the desk. I was like, am I being punked? Is this the Twilight Zone? I don't understand. Unbelievable to me. Unbelievable to me that why would you even have a commission structure if that's your attitude? Because it's definitely not motivating the team.
I don't want to arm wrestle with you, but I actually had a client that was heavy base salary for salespeople, and then they had a bonus program that was paid annually in the first quarter following the year. Like, as a sales guy, there's no relationship to that money with whatever behavior that took place in the 365 days previous.
No.
And it's certainly not going to change my behavior in this year that I'm being paid.
No.
The closer we get it to behavior, the better the behavior gets.
In fact, there's a really interesting phenomenon in the UK where I lived for a long time, as you know. In the banking industry and financial services, they have annual bonuses. And they often have like an idea of what their bonus is going to be, but it also gets paid at like a month or a quarter after the financial year. When you look at movements, staffing movements within financial services, the most resignation happens right after the bonus gets paid.
Right.
Because all the top talent will say, yes, I want to leave, I want to move, but I can't move until I have had my bonus for the year. So they wait to get the bonus, and the very next month they're out the door. So that's definitely not improved the behavior that year. All it does is lock them in for a few more months, and then they go on anyway. So, Louisa, the first thing, as I said, was, is it the right compensation structure? The second thing is, I would have a question. You said in your question, you say, most of my salespeople, or none of my salespeople are hitting the target revenue consistently. So my next question obviously would be, why aren't they hitting your targets consistently? And maybe because you say at the end of your question, how can we make the compensation model more motivating? Well, maybe the issue isn't that the compensation model is motivating or demotivating. It may be. Maybe there's another reason or compounding factors why they're not hitting target. Maybe your sales management is non-existent or lacking. Maybe you don't have a coaching culture. Maybe you're not doing enough role practice. Maybe you don't have an effective playbook that's being deployed so you can get consistent performance. There could be a myriad of reasons why the salespeople are not hitting that target, which is not directly linked to the compensation model. And then the third thing about this idea of how can we make the compensation model more motivating? Well, Jack and I might differ slightly on this, although I think we're largely aligned. I too am a believer that, you know, money does motivate salespeople, but I don't believe that it's the only thing that motivates them. In fact, I have a number of clients where we've done evaluations of the sales team where, based on the industry that they're in or the culture that they have, the salespeople are also motivated by intrinsic, so validation, recognition, significance, and altruistic. They want to do good for the world, for the society, for their community, whatever it might be. So I would encourage you, when you're talking about motivation, all of the things we've talked about in the compensation model, you know, commission from $1, graduated commission structure, all that stuff, absolutely, let's have that conversation. But you should also think about, what else can I do to motivate my people? Jack and I both talk about recognition and reward systems within sales culture. And to give you one or two very simple examples, about 15 years ago, I was in the commercial real estate market, and the company had been courting me. I'd done a 3-month trial with them. It went very well. And the CEO of the company bought me a Porsche 993 as a signing bonus to join the company full time. And as a kid growing up in South Africa, that was my dream car. That was the poster on the wall. But that was also the thing that I had a limiting belief coming from the southern tip of Africa that I would never own a car like that. It doesn't matter how much money I had. I didn't deserve to own that car because kids that come where I come from, we don't get to drive cars like that. What I didn't know at the time when he got me the cars, you could lease that thing for $800 a month. But when this black on black with red caliper car showed up, my knees buckled and I got teary because somebody had reached into my soul and given me something that I would never have given myself, because I had a belief that I needed to save for my retirement. I was 30 years old at the time. So it was like, I have to save for retirement. I've got to put my kids through private school. If he had given me an extra $800 a month in commission, the discretionary effort would barely have moved the needle. He got me my dream car on an $800 a month lease. And I was so fired up that I single-handedly pretty much took that company and did a 4x on top line revenue. I took it 5x. We took it from 2 million to 10 million in 3.5 years. And I was like a demon possessed, because every day I got to get in my Porsche and drive to work. And I would be buzzing by the time I got to my desk. $800 a month in extra commission, I would have forgotten about it after month one. So sometimes when you want to motivate, money, absolutely. Commission, absolutely. But Jack tells a great story about clients that have got a line item on their P&L, which is just called dreams. And your job is to figure out how to make small dreams come true for your team that's going to light them up so much that the discretionary effort is off the charts.
And we should just stop right there. It was such a compelling point. I just want to add one little piece, and that's this. Are you asking your salespeople, how could the compensation plans be better? What is it that would turn their jets on?
Sure.
Where does it fall short, and what's nirvana? And no promises made. But if I want to make people happy, I need to ask them what makes them happy. It's as simple as that, right?
And I think, that's the whole concept around ownership. If a salesperson has involvement in the creation of a plan, in the setting of quotas and targets, then they have ownership. Then they feel like it's something that I've co-created with my upline. I'm committed to achieving it. If they get told unilaterally, this is what you will do, then there's a disconnect, and often they don't hit it because there's not a belief, there's not a conviction that it can be done. Jack, I think that is probably a great place for us to end. What a powerful couple of topics, and I really hope that everybody watching and listening is going to get immense value out of that. I know these are topics that recur over and over again with scaling up companies. Thank you again, as always, for your time, for your unique insight and experience. And I hope that everybody has enjoyed this session as much as I have.
Yeah, it was a blast. I'll see you on the next episode.
Wonderful. I'll see you in a few weeks. Thanks, Jack.